Good afternoon, everyone. I'm joined today by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Damien Williams, and DEA Administrator Ann Milgram. Today, Juan Orlando Hernández, the former president of Honduras, was extradited to the United States to face federal charges. Hernandez is charged with participating in a corrupt and violent drug trafficking conspiracy to facilitate the importation of tons of cocaine into the United States from 2004 to 2022. As is charged in the indictment, Hernandez abused his position as President of Honduras from 2014 through 2022 to operate the country as a narco state. Hernandez is alleged to have received millions of dollars from multiple drug trafficking organizations, including from the former leader of the Sinaloa cartel, known as El Chapo. In return, drug traffickers in Honduras were allowed to operate with virtual impunity. We allege that Hernandez corrupted legitimate public institutions in the country, including parts of the National Police, military, and National Congress. And we allege that Hernandez worked closely with other public officials to protect cocaine shipments bound for the United States. Those officials included his brother, Tony Hernandez, a former Honduras congressman who was convicted in 2019 in the Southern District and sentenced to life in prison. Because of these alleged crimes, communities in the United States suffered, and the people of Honduras suffered. As you will hear shortly in more detail from the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, these charges are part of a years-long investigation of criminal drug trafficking organizations and their infiltration of the Honduran government. So far, this investigation has led to the conviction of numerous Honduran drug traffickers who are responsible for the importation of over 500,000 kilograms of cocaine into the United States, as well as dozens of foreign murders. Drug trafficking fuels violent crime and addiction, it devastates families, and it ravages communities. The Justice Department is committed to disrupting the entire ecosystem of drug trafficking networks that harm the American people, no matter how far or how high we must go. As a DEA administrator will explain in more detail, today's charges are part of our broader efforts to disrupt the activities of the most violent and extensive drug trafficking organizations and gangs. The Justice Department is taking a comprehensive approach to protecting our communities and our country from violent crime and from the scourge of deadly drugs. We will work to support the communities most impacted by drug addiction and abuse. We will work with our partners to hold drug traffickers accountable for their crimes, and we will confront corruption and criminal conduct anywhere that undermines the security of the American people. I'm now going to turn the program over to the United States Attorney, Damien Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. The charges we announced today seek to finally hold Juan Orlando Hernández accountable for years of corruption, years of violence, and years of drug trafficking. We allege that for over a decade, Hernandez abused his positions in the Honduran government, including as president, to partner with and take millions of dollars of bribes from some of the world's most notorious drug traffickers. We allege that he used that money to enrich himself, fund his political campaigns, and commit voter fraud. And in exchange, Hernandez and his co-conspirators helped push 500,000 kilograms of cocaine into the United States. That's 500 tons of cocaine, poison that landed in this country on our streets. And as we allege in the indictment, that's exactly what Hernandez wanted. We allege that during a meeting with a co-conspirator, Hernandez declared that he wanted, and I quote, to stuff the drugs right up the noses of the gringos. This arrest is our answer. It is the culmination of many years of extraordinary work by my office and the DEA. Now let me say a little bit more about the charges. As alleged in the indictment, since 2004, members of the defendant's conspiracy have transported approximately 500,000 kilograms of cocaine into the U.S. And we allege that the defendant's organization protected their cocaine distribution network with guns, violence, and murder. And we allege that there was another essential component to protecting this drug operation: breathtaking public corruption that started as far back as 2005. We allege that the defendant took millions of dollars in bribes from traffickers. We allege, for example, that in 2013, the defendant accepted a $1 million bribe from El Chapo, who was the head of the Sinaloa cartel, in exchange for a promise to protect the cartel's drug trafficking in Honduras. Hernandez then directed his co-conspirators to travel to various parts of Honduras to bribe officials to manipulate votes for him to become president. 4 years later, when he was running for re-election, Hernandez was at it again, taking bribes from drug traffickers and buying votes. In exchange for those millions of dollars in bribes, Hernandez allegedly facilitated the importation of massive quantities of cocaine into the U.S. According to the indictment, Hernandez ensured that the other members of this conspiracy were protected from arrest and investigation, that they had access to sensitive law enforcement information to avoid detection, and that their drug shipments were protected by heavily armed security carrying machine guns. This rampant corruption and massive cocaine trafficking came at a cost to the people of Honduras. Honduras became one of the most violent countries in the world during the defendant's presidency. And while Hernandez amassed money and political influence, the people of Honduras endured conditions of poverty and violence. This indictment reflects years of work by my office and the DEA investigating and prosecuting members of this conspiracy. In 2019, we convicted the defendant's brother, Tony Hernandez. He was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes. In 2021, we convicted Giovanni Fuentes Ramirez, another member of the conspiracy. He too was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes. It's now the defendant's turn to face justice. I want to thank the Attorney General, whose leadership of this department and support for the U.S. attorneys across the country has been extraordinary. And I want to thank the DEA's leadership and the Special Operations Division Bilateral Investigations Unit for their incredible work. The vision, commitment, and drive of the case agents all the way up through the leadership at the DEA, and in particular, Ann Milgram, are remarkable. I want to thank our partners in the criminal division under the leadership of Kenneth Polite, and particularly his team in the Office of International Affairs, for their incredible support and assistance in getting us to this point. And I want to commend the career prosecutors from my office handling this case: Jacob Gutwillig, Michael Lockard, Jason Richmond, and Eleanor Tarlow, and their supervisors Amanda Houle and George Turner, the chiefs of the office's National Security and International Narcotics Unit, and the many prosecutors who worked on this case before them. It's now my pleasure to turn the podium over to my friend and great partner from the DEA, Ann Milgram.
Thank you, Attorney General Garland and U.S. Attorney Williams. This case should send a clear message to any foreign leader who corruptly abuses their power to support drug cartels. If you take drug money for your election, if you accept drug cartel bribes, if you traffic deadly drugs, if you protect criminal drug cartels, if you turn the power of the state into a violent drug trafficking machine, if you allow violence and murder to flourish at the hands of the cartels, then the DEA will stop at nothing to hold you accountable for your crimes. If you think you can hide behind the power of your position, you are wrong. The United States is in the midst of an unprecedented and devastating overdose epidemic. Every 5 minutes, an American is dying of a drug overdose. The vast majority of the drugs that are killing Americans are not homegrown. They come from abroad. This epidemic is being driven by international drug cartels that profit from the sale of deadly drugs in American communities. Today, the Department of Justice has unsealed charges against Juan Orlando Hernández, the former president of Honduras, for drug trafficking and weapons possession. Hernandez campaigned on a simple promise to the Honduran people, that he would clean up political corruption and fight drug traffickers. But in reality, the indictment alleges that Hernandez did the opposite. It alleges that he used the presidency to join forces with some of the largest and most violent drug trafficking organizations in the world. It alleges that Hernandez used drug money to finance his political rise. And once he was elected president, he used the government of Honduras's law enforcement, military, and financial resources to further his drug trafficking. The indictment alleges that Hernandez personally profited from cocaine sales, that he was personally involved in covering up Honduran drug trafficking schemes, going so far as to ensure that certain co-conspirators who he trafficked drugs with would not be arrested or extradited. The indictment alleges that Hernandez repeatedly accepted bribes from cartel leaders, including a $1 million bribe from El Chapo, the head of the Mexico-based Sinaloa cartel. That was prior to Chapo's conviction on drug trafficking charges in the United States. Sinaloa is today one of the 2 Mexican criminal drug cartels responsible for the fentanyl flooding into the United States. Thanks to the outstanding work of DEA agents, intelligence analysts, and other DEA employees, Hernandez will now answer for his corrupt and violent acts. I want to thank all of the incredible men and women at DEA who worked tirelessly on this investigation, and in particular, DEA's Bilateral Investigations Unit at our Special Operations Division, which has led this investigation for many years. I also want to thank our Honduras Country Office and our New York Field Division for their important contributions to this effort. DEA is incredibly grateful to the Southern District of New York for their exceptional work on the prosecution of Hernandez. I am personally grateful to U.S. Attorney Damien Williams for his leadership on this matter and for our strong continuing partnership. DEA is also grateful to the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General for their support, to the Office of International Affairs in the Criminal Division for their assistance with the extradition, and to the new administration in Honduras for its support of this extradition. Across the world, DEA is working to identify and dismantle the drug trafficking networks that are responsible for the deadly drugs coming into the United States. We will relentlessly pursue anyone, drug traffickers, money launderers, and heads of state who threaten the safety and health of the American people. Thank you.
Katie?
Has the department seen a change in the amount of drugs coming into the United States since it began this campaign to crack down on this particular trafficking ring and the former Honduran government officials? And then related, any thoughts on the current leadership? Have we seen yet any improvements to the kind of corruption that we saw previously, the kind of corruption that's been driving people to leave Honduras?
So I'm going to flip this question to the DEA administrator.
I'll speak just for a moment on the question of have we seen a change in the trends. The course of conduct alleged in the indictment is from 2004 to 2022, and so the answer is, these charges were just brought recently and extended to earlier this year. So we track trends regularly, and we'll continue to do so. But at this time, it's a very recent charge.
First, if I could, for the DEA administrator, and then Mr. Garland, I have a separate question. But bringing charges like this, do you have any concerns that bringing charges against a former president could further deteriorate relations with DEA in Latin American countries?
DEA's mission is a very simple one. In many ways, it's the same mission that we had almost 50 years ago when we were founded, and that is to protect the safety and the health of the American public. Right now, 107,000 Americans, almost 107,000 Americans have died driven mostly by fentanyl and also by methamphetamine. So our role in this moment is to do everything we can to save American lives and to stop deadly drugs from coming into the United States. And as I said, we will pursue anyone who breaks the law and who is responsible, particularly the criminal networks who are responsible for what we are seeing in the United States today.
The Attorney General, a few weeks ago, you said the department was beginning to look at possible war crimes involving Russia and Ukraine. Can you give us an update on that? And are U.S. prosecutors now collecting evidence of potential war crimes there?
Just a minute, let me add one thing to what the administrator said. Look, in this particular case, the new administration of Honduras wants our help, and we are hopeful that honest administrations across Latin America will view our assistance in rooting out corruption, and particularly narco-corruption, will be to the benefit of those countries, to those administrations, and to their people. So I think there's no conflict between our doing this kind of work and having good relationships in Latin America. On the second question, we have now been in contact with the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, and we are assisting. They've collected a group of international allies to assist, and so we are helping in the collection of evidence and the preservation of evidence relating to possible war crimes. Yes, we are. Yeah.
Mr. Attorney General.
I'm not supposed to override my boss here.
Mr. Attorney General, can you explain to us the Justice Department's strategy in appealing the district court opinion on the mask mandate, and why, for example, the government didn't seek an immediate stay?
So the question of the stay, to start with, is a tactical strategy question, which is going to be resolved by the Solicitor General's office and the litigators. The reason for appealing is we believe that CDC has clear statutory authority for the mask mandate, and the CDC has assessed that it is necessary for the health of the American people, particularly the traveling public. That's our explanation for why we're appealing.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.